Tailored for the mature adult audience, we will pull no punches as we explore the intricacies of leading teams, managing conflicts, and fostering a culture of accountability in the workplace and in real life, too. Welcome to Fuck Around and Find Out, the no-nonsense, adult-oriented podcast series by the hrlady that dives deep into the world of leadership, human resources, and the challenges of the modern workplace. If you're looking for candid conversations and a touch of humor, you're in the right place. Remember, in the world of leadership and HR, it's always better to be proactive than to, well, fuck around and find out. Hey, everybody, Wendy Sellers here and JC.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Just a reminder, this session is not for little ears. We are going to be diving into some lawsuits and some results because employers fucked around and are about to find out, or they did find out with major lawsuits.
Yeah, you got some pretty historical big time ones on this list too. This is not like, we're not talking about Ted's carpet cleaning and Apopka here. This is big stuff we're about to get into.
It really is. It really is. And I want to continue this conversation after today. So please, our listeners, if there's any specific information that you want to talk about in the future, we will dive into it and break it down because let's face it, there are a lot of employers out there that are just not good employers, right? Sure, they might have health insurance, but in the end, they discriminate. And so when companies, do things intentional or unintentional, although hold on that for a minute, they deserve everything that they get. Unfortunately, the problem is that it hurts the other people that work there. So you sign up to a job. You're like, I'm going to work here. I got, okay money. I got benefits. Maybe I'm a, straight white guy. And so they're not going to bother me. But, oh, look, now they're discriminating against my coworkers and now that makes me feel comfortable. So I don't really feel sorry for any of the employers that we're about to talk about because they truly did make mistakes. Hopefully they were unintentional. But as I've said many, many times, if you're an employer saying, I didn't know that was the law or I didn't know that was illegal is no longer an excuse. It really should never have been. And if it is so intentional that you are straight out discriminating against somebody, then you absolutely deserve everything you get. You deserve the negative press. You deserve the lawsuits. You deserve the EEOC breathing down your throat for years, not just once, years on end. And you also deserve the backlash when all your other employees quit and the good ones walk out the door because they say, no, I don't want to work here. You intentionally did that or you should have known better. Thoughts on that?
Don't be stupid. Let's go back in time real quick. The EEOC, they filed a number of discrimination cases against a clothing store, Abercrombie & Fitch. A Muslim woman who wore a hijab was turned down for a job because she wore a hijab. Back in 2008, Abercrombie & Fitch broke Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So they were told to pay $50,000 in fines. That case brought attention to the problems of religious discrimination at work. Back in 2008. And to even have it written down, Wendy, the fact that the EEOC had to deal with a number of cases against Abercrombie & Fitch altogether is just absolutely crazy that one employer will continually be brought up again. Is that store even open anymore? I don't think it is, right?
I have no idea. I can't say I've ever shopped there. Definitely not my cup of tea. But regardless, even if it was, this lawsuit, which again was a very long time ago, would make me think twice about shopping there and definitely about sending anybody I know to apply there for a job. Now, people can recover, right? Companies can recover. Maybe, hopefully they've learned from 2008, but people usually don't learn. But it is, that's embarrassing. That's incredibly embarrassing and just straight out stupid. Why would you tell people that they can't wear this or that? I could see if it was something that, their boobs were hanging out or whatever, but that's not the case at all. And so they definitely deserved that lawsuit 100%. Another lawsuit that I want to talk about is about race discrimination. Now, the interesting thing here, JC, is you would think this is a recent one because of all the things we hear in the news. But this was actually a long, long time ago, 1996 with Texaco. And so this was a huge one. Ready for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
$176 million.
Oh my God.
$176
Texaco
million.
had to pay that much? They paid that much?
Yep.
What happened? What's the word there?
So it was one of the biggest cases of race discrimination ever. And I think to this day, Black workers filed the lawsuit because they said they were treated unfairly when it came to promotions, pay, and how well they did their jobs. And there were, oh my goodness, there were actual recorded audio tapes of people, company leaders saying words that were hurtful to people of different races.
Wow.
Whoa.
Can you imagine nowadays with all the monitoring, tracking, and everything that's taking place with the remote workforce? And hey, we don't save those recordings, but lo and behold, maybe there's some recordings that do get saved, and the amount of trash that might start coming out on people in the near future too. I think about that. I think about that quite often, believe it or not. What are your thoughts?
So it's interesting because I went into looking at this more about the tape recordings. So the tape recordings of what these other leaders were saying about Black workers were made by an executive who said he wanted to keep accurate meeting minutes. He gave them to the plaintiffs, so to the employees in the civil suit after he lost his job in corporate reorg.
Oh, wow.
So
kind of knew the writing was on the wall at some point there, huh?
Yeah. So whether he was intentionally recording what they were saying or not, he said, no, that was just for meeting minutes. But by the way, you just fired me for something else, or maybe it would be for that. And here I'm going to give it to the other plaintiffs. Now, I don't want to go into all this right now because I'm not an expert on the law about tape recordings, but usually you cannot record other people, especially via phone or electronic audio, Zoom, without their permission because of all the laws that we have in the United States, especially if it crosses state lines. But this was, it sounds like this was not done electronically. It was, hey, we're all in a room here and I'm recording this meeting for meeting minutes, because this was back in 1996 when you didn't necessarily have meetings via phone or Zoom or something like that. Either way, it definitely went back to, it hurt them. How would you feel, JC, if you were an employee, regardless of your skin color, gender, that worked at Texaco and said, okay, now you're taking $176 million that we could be using for something else, and now you're having to pay off these former or current workers. How would you feel about that?
I wouldn't feel good about it, but I'll tell you what, I'd try to figure out a way to get in on that lawsuit and try to figure out whether or not they discriminated against me, too. $176 million, at least get, send 10 grand my way because you treated me poorly one day. Like, geez Louise, 176. I mean, I get it. They're a huge company. I don't even know how much they were worth back then or how much they were bringing in back then, but $176 million. And you're probably telling people that are like down on the shop floor or out of the oil rigs or fields, like, hey, we can't get you new boots or wrenches or something like that. You got to use the old ones still. We ain't got no money. And then you see him having to spend money like this. I'm speculating, of course, but not cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not cool.
And there was also separate civil suits that became a national embarrassment to Texaco, and they released tape recordings in which these executives, these leaders, not only mocked blacks but plotted to destroy documents as well.
Oh my God!
And so the EEOC had to intervene in those too because it was to protect the public interest. It was Texaco, so they had to do back pay. They had to give raises to black employees. They had to create various programs to diversify Texaco's workforce and to improve working conditions for Black employees and so much more. I mean, I wouldn't want to work there no matter what the color of my skin was just because of this. And so, yeah, folks that are listening, please don't fuck around, because this is what you're going to find out is it is expensive to intentionally, in this case, intentionally discriminate against somebody for any reason, but 100% because of the color of their skin. Another lawsuit.
Interesting, though, real quick on Texaco. Just a little bit of research from the Book of Knowledge, that being the interwebs here. Amazing thing. It was invented by Al Gore, but renamed by George Bush, called the Internets. It was plural at the time. All right, so in 1984, Texaco purchased the Getty Oil Company, but was sued for contract interference by the Pennzoil Company, whose own imminent acquisition of Getty had been derailed by Texaco's successful bid. That was in 84. When was that filing? The 176? That was in 1986? Would that be right?
1996.
96? Okay, so a decade prior, they go through this massive merger. There's money flowing left and right. And then by 96, the firm budgeted $2.1 billion for international development at the time. Just international development alone, $2.1 billion. That was for new projects in the North Sea, Nigeria, Angola, Australia, and the southeast portion of Asia. And they had huge plans for production increase in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. And then corporate restructuring hit, and then the $170 million settlement due to racial discrimination. And when we think about $2.1 billion planned for projects, $170 million, we hear that number and we say to ourselves, oh my gosh, for them, that 170 was probably just a drop in the bucket with $2.1 billion just on new projects. Oh my God. Think about that.
It just pisses me off, though. We could be using that money, as the company. Like if I worked there, we could be using that money for something else. We could be using that money to help our employees, to build our communities, to sell more and make more money. Instead, we're using $176 million to pay people off because you screw them.
And then 4 years, it took 4 years from that point, just historically speaking, to bring everyone who's listening up to speed. 4 years after that, in the year 2000, October 2000, Chevron Corporation agreed to buy Texaco for $36 billion. So that whole structure of all those people and everything that did wrong took 4 years, cleaned house, and they were onto a brand new path with a brand new owner. How crazy is that when you think about the entire structure being wiped out and starting clean with a brand new owner?
Yeah, it's completely insane. American culture, it's all about money, unfortunately, but not anymore. I mean, it still is, but the EEOC is totally stepping up. On our previous podcast that JC and I have done on our clean version, we were just talking about, how the EEOC, if you file a complaint with the EEOC, an employee, and then you say, oh, no, never mind, we're going to settle, we're going to take that back. The EEOC can say, oh, hold your horses there, defendant, or the employee. We're going to go through with this on behalf of you, even though you don't want to. And here is one that is similar to that. So there was one in 2009 with UPS. The EEOC sued UPS, saying that the company was unfair to deaf workers by not making acceptable accommodations to one specific deaf worker, by not making an accommodation for him as required by the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in the end, the UPS decided to pay $95,000 to settle the lawsuit and make sure that the hearing impaired employee or employees would get help in the future. When I clicked onto this EEOC press release, which was out in 2013, even though the lawsuit started in 2009, the judge reversed prior rulings dismissing the case and then said, no, the EEOC itself is going to sue UPS. So this is why it's super important for you to, have policies and procedures, let people know internally, hey, you can wave the red flag. If your company is big enough, you can have an HR person that they talk to, but you have to make sure your HR person is competent and not just, CYA of the company, but they're always looking out for their employees as well. And that you might even need to have an external hotline that you could say, don't go through us, call this hotline, and we will make sure that it gets addressed before you go to the EEOC. And or depending on where you're at, you might have some kind of arbitration agreement as well.
It's an amazing point, and UPS might want to consider a hotline on that. So let's hit some highlights real quick on UPS, okay? And this is all public knowledge. This is not insider info. Google this. You'll find it out there as well. But UPS did have to pay $4.9 million to settle a EEOC religious discrimination lawsuit that was out of New York, okay? The world's largest package delivery company paid $4.9 million and provided other relief to settle a class religious discrimination lawsuit filed through the EEOC in 2018. So on top of that, it was $75,000 to settle a disparate treatment lawsuit with the EEOC. It was also another $75,000 to resolve a disability discrimination lawsuit filed and pursued through the EEOC. $2 million in monetary relief, plus updating his policies on reasonable accommodation as well. They have a track record of having to pay out a lot of money, and they've dealt a lot with the EEOC as well, Ms. Wendy.
This is why it's super important for everyone that's listening today. I don't care what your role is to make sure that you are connected with the EEOC. You can get onto their website. Like I said, I get emails every single day about what's going on in the EEOC. And then I've also connected with all employment attorneys in the states that I'm working in or currently working in, so I could find out. I could get on their email list or just follow them on LinkedIn to say, like, okay, there's a new law in that state. My clients need to know about it, and we need to know what's going on. So one of the new laws that I do want you to know about that has come out, well, it's not really that it's come out, but the EEOC recently on July 2023, so like a month ago, they updated their website about ADA and individuals with visual disabilities at work. There's also information about, not just about being blind or having visual disabilities. There's other kind of disabilities that have just been updated on the EEOC website this year regarding deaf candidates and employees as well. So make sure that you understand that you need to know what these, what these laws are all about. There was I wanted to go over one case real quick. It was Red Roof Inn. It was from last year, 2022. It was like December. So it's, not that long ago. Red Roof Inn, had to pay $43,000 to settle an EEOC disability discrimination lawsuit. And this was because of a blind worker they discriminated against. And I have a reason to believe that because of that lawsuit that went through the EEOC is why they're now coming out, just recently with more information on visual disabilities and clarifying it. I got to tell you, JC, whenever I see something come out from the EEOC or the ADA that says, hey, we just have a guidance that we want you to know about, I'm like, oh, no, that's kind of like a law. We need to read that. Like, oh, it's a new guidance. Why would they just suddenly put out a new guidance? That's because they're going to start holding people accountable to the new guidance. And so recently there's a new guidance that comes out about visual disabilities in the workplace and the Americans with Disabilities Act. I have put a lot of information about that on my blog and on my LinkedIn as well. So please make sure you check that out so you understand, that you cannot discriminate against an employee, including a candidate who says, hey, I need help with this job interview because I'm blind or because I'm disabled or because I'm deaf. You cannot say, okay, nope, we don't want to interview you because it's too difficult for us, or that's not really a reasonable accommodation. You really should be taking the other side and saying it's not really up to us to decide at this point. Let's interview the person and then find out if they're a good fit for the job. What do you got,
Red
JC?
Roof details for you, Ms. Wendy Sellers. I'm going to lay them on the table because it plays directly into what you're saying. And then this will help lay the base. And just wait. Here it comes. Here's the whole thing. You ready for it? Very short, though, okay? That former employee received $43,188 in compensation. A 16-month consent decree was reached, and the decree included permanent restrictions on Red Roof Inns. They cannot deny reasonable accommodations for disabled employees to perform their job duties or enjoy employment benefits. They cannot discriminate against disabled applicants or employees in promotions or hiring due to their disability or need for accommodation. And Red Roof is required to provide ADA training to specific high-ranking personnel and those responsible for employment decisions in the online connectivity department, very specifically that department. They must also adhere to notice postings, compliance monitoring, and regular reporting to the EEOC. So it's not like you just pay the money and you walk away.
Right. No, they're on you for a long time. They're on you for a long time. You're not just saying, no. And they often have to hire somebody either permanently or temporarily or even a consultant for X amount of years to say, no, you're going to pay to get this fixed. So yeah, maybe you just paid $43,000, but now you got to hire an $80,000 person for at least 3 years to fix all the crap that you already screwed up.
So you got ADA training for specific high ranking personnel. And let's say that there's 6 people in that room and the average salary is $100,000 and you're going to tie them up for how many days? Now you start to equate those numbers and where you sitting at when you're thinking about the business from the overall. And very specifically, the online connectivity department, their investigation got pretty freaking clear on that one, I would say.
I love it. I say, you know what, to all the employers who are saying, you know what, we're just going to make money and we're going to screw people over. You know what you need to be doing now? Stop fucking around or you're going to find out. Thanks for listening.